presenter is Dr. Shravan. Is a second year MCH postgraduate from Amrita Institute of Medical Sciences, Kochi. He'll be presenting the PBC next to Dr. Aniraz sir. Shravan,
Yes, ma'am.
you start your
I'll
presentation.
start my presentation. Can it be seen, ma'am?
Yes.
Good evening, sir. I'll be presenting a case of post-burn contracture of the neck. Presenting a case of a 44-year-old lady from Kochi, who's a homemaker by occupation. She comes with the chief complaints of excessive scarring in the neck and the chest area, inability to look up, and tightness in the neck area since the last 1.5 years. She gives history of burns sustained in January 2019 due to a kerosene stove explosion, during which time she presented with around 30% of burns. She sustained injuries to the neck, chest, and the right upper limb. Coming to the treatment history, she underwent regular dressings in a local hospital following the injury for about a month. Following which she was discharged with raw areas, for which she continued her dressings at home. The wounds finally healed by secondary intention. During her hospital stay, she does not give any history of ICU admission, no history of any skin grafting procedures. She gives history of undergoing physiotherapy during the period of hospital stay, but she discontinued it after discharge. She does not give any history of any splint being used during or after the hospital stay. Coming to comorbid conditions, she's not a known diabetic or hypertensive. She's a known case of hypothyroidism, for which she's on regular treatment.
Before going to the examination,
yes,
you have some more points in the history.
Yes.
Where is the where this burn occurred? In open space or in a closed space?
She said in a kitchen, sir, in a closed space.
Is there after that any respiratory or anything like that? Any breathing difficulties?
She doesn't give any history of breathing difficulties. No history of any intubation or ICU admission during the hospital stay. She said only regular dressings were being done for the wounds and medications, conservatively treated.
Okay. They have advised anything special, any proper position of during the treatment, or just press the dressing and leave like that?
She doesn't mention anything about any instructions. So she said she was advised physiotherapy, which she did not follow after getting discharged from the
only physiotherapy. Only during the time of treatment, only dressings was done.
Only dressings, yes.
Okay, proceed.
Coming to examination of this patient, the general physical examination, vitals were stable and she's conscious and oriented. She showed no signs of pallor, icterus, cyanosis, generalized lymphadenopathy or edema. Coming to local examination, on inspection, the extent of the scar, basically it's vertically it's a 15 centimeter hypertrophic scar noted on the neck predominantly, which is extending from the mentum onto the chest with extension onto both the breasts. Horizontally, it's approximately 20 centimeters in length, extending from the right intra-auricular to the left intra-auricular area. Superiorly, and inferiorly from the left mid-clavicular line to the right axilla. And hypopigmentation is noted along the lower part of the neck, upper part of the chest, and the right shoulder. She's unable to extend her neck. Forward gaze is maintained. Side movement of the head is also restricted. Mouth opening is adequate. There is no eversion of the lower lip on inspection. Bilateral breasts are pulled upwards, and she also has hypertrophic scars on the right axilla, elbow, and on the right hand.
Okay.
Coming to palpatory findings, there's no local rise of temperature, it's non-tender. The scar on the neck and upper part of the chest are firm. The scar is supple on the lateral aspect, on the lower aspect, on the right shoulder and on the breasts. There's the scar on the neck is non-blanching, with the hypopigmented areas over the chest and on the right shoulder show blanching. Surrounding skin around the scar are normal and supple. The range of motion of the neck, she can flex up to 10 degrees. Extension is not possible. A lateral rotation is approximately 20 degrees on each side.
So lateral rotation is to the left and right side, both sides are restricted.
Restricted, yes, sir.
Okay.
She also, on systemic examination, RS, CVS, CNS, on per abdomen, no abnormalities were detected. So coming to examination of the possible donor sites for reconstructive purposes. In case of split thickness skin grafting, both the thighs being the possible donor sites, there's no scarring on both the thighs. And in case of local flap cover, the left shoulder, there's no scarring. Right shoulder and arm, there's minimal scarring present.
Okay.
Coming to measurement of the true defect after release of the contracture.
How will you?
Yes.
Okay, that is during surgery. How will you assess the extent of the true defect?
So it would be done in a.
This is what is seen is the apparent defect.
Yes.
So how will you? Suppose you are planning for a flap. So pre-operatively, how will you?
So it would be ideal to check in a person with a similar build, with the head, with the neck and extension, taking bony landmarks as ideal points for to measure the defect. So if, for example, in the midline it would be mentum and the sternal notch, and on the lateral aspect it would be the mastoid, the midclavicular line, and it would be preferable if you do it on a person with a similar build with the neck and extension.
So this patient, you said that the vertical length is 15 centimeter. That is the apparent length.
Yes.
So what is the true length in the vertical dimension?
It would be, if I'm doing an incision and contracture release.
No, before that. So when you plan, you have to plan like that.
Yes, sir.
Because you said your plan is also, other than skin graft, you are planning for some flap also. So for planning a flap, you have to get an idea about the true defect.
Yes. So it would be more than the apparent defect.
Definitely, it will be much more than the apparent defect.
Yes. So it would ideally in the neck and extension in a similar person, it would be better to, since in this particular patient the scar is extending up to the mentum. So
in this case, you see the defective. What type of how will you grade the neck contracture?
So in this particular case, it's a class 2 neck contracture. So it's graded basically. Class 1 would be that upward gaze is possible. Class 2 would be that.
Who graded it?
So there are different grading systems available.
Actually, there are two grading systems. One is by Ocher classification.
Yes.
It is, as you said, it can be mild, that is class 1, then moderate or severe.
No extension, yes, sir. Extension is not possible.
There is one more is added, that is very extensive, that is a mentosternal adhesion.
Yes, yes.
So do you think which grade it comes?
This would be great too, sir, because flexion is possible, forward gaze is maintained, but extension is not possible, sir. There's no mentosternal adhesion.
Yeah. Okay. So what is your plan?
So coming to the diagnosis, it's a class 2 post-burn contracture of the neck with a mature scar on the neck, whereas the scar on the chest and the right shoulder are immature, with secondary deformity of the breast. Coming to management, I would like to investigate
Before that, there is one more grading system recently added by Remensider. Have you heard of that?
Sorry, sir, I didn't get you, sir.
Remensider and Donnellan. So this came in 2002.
Okay.
Okay, you proceed with management.
Nice. So I would like to investigate the patient for surgery. Initially, I would like to get a routine investigation along with the thyroid function test in order for anesthesia clearance. Also, I would like to get an X-ray of the neck, AP and lateral view, so that I could check the position of the trachea in case any anticipated difficulty in intubation is there during the procedure.
Okay.
Coming to the treatment plan, I would my ideal choice would be incision and release of the contracture, followed by.
So before going to the treatment plan, there are so many problems in this case you must anticipate.
Yes.
So what are these problems?
So the first thing is intubation can be a problem for this patient.
Anesthesia problem. So you are a consultant. So how will you manage this situation?
So in case fiber optic intubation is not possible for this patient, then it would be ideal to under tumescent anesthesia to release the contracture first.
So before that, you must discuss with, you are not giving the anesthesia. So you have to discuss with your colleague, anesthesiologist.
Yes.
So there must be a teamwork with the anesthesiologist. Suppose he said he can do with fiber optic intubation. It is well and good.
Yes.
Then, so fiber optic failed. What will you do?
Then tumescent infiltration followed by release of the contracture. Then intubation can be done after that, sir.
Okay.
So my ideal choice would be incision and release, followed by split thickness skin grafting, sir. Other than that, excision of the scar can also be done. The hypertrophic scar, the most hypertrophic part of the scar can be excised with SSG.
Okay, let us stop. So you said the incision and release. Where will you do incision and release, or where will you do excision and release? Excision of the scar. So what are the indications for that? So the two things you can do to release the contracture. This is contracture. So one is incision and release. The other thing is excision and release. So where will you do incision and release? Where will you do excision and release?
So incision and release, if there's only a band contracture which is restricting the movement of the neck, the extension of the neck. If it's localized to one particular place, then incision of that the most contracted area and release would be sufficient. But if the hypertrophic area is more, it's more extensive, causing secondary deformities like eversion of the lip, things like that. So excision would be a better option.
So this, you said that this is a band contracture. What is the extent of the scar in front of them?
It's extending from the mentum on up to
so
the.
Based on the history, it healed by secondary intention. Am I right?
Yes.
Then, so you can see the scar over the affected area.
Yes. Yes, sir.
So what is the so what is the primary contracture and what is the secondary contracture?
In case of
I mean the intrinsic contractor and extrinsic contractor, not primary.
So intrinsic contracture is during the healing period. No, the deeper structures will not be involved during the healing period. That contracture occurs when there's intrinsic
contracture means the area affected will be healed by the secondary intention. That part will be contracted. Extrinsic contracture means due to this intrinsic contracture, the adjacent area will undergo contraction. Even in the neck, the adjacent part.
Yes.
So the part where there is intrinsic contracture, you have to exercise.
Okay.
Am I right?
Yes, sir. Yes.
The adjacent part.
Yes.
Where there is extrinsic contracture, you can do it incision and release.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So in this case, what is your plan? In this particular case?
In this case, it would be incision, sir. Incision and release. Since it healed by secondary intention.
So you see even the face has shifted, the structures, one thing has shifted downwards.
Yes.
So these are all extrinsic contractures. So you will do a incision and release.
Yes.
And you will exercise the scar also. That is the part that has undergone intrinsic contracture.
Yes.
So excision plus release.
Yes.
Understand?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay.
Sir, in certain cases, a locoregional flap cover can also be considered.
So you come to this case. What you do for
this case? Excision of the scar and release followed by split thickness skin grafting.
So how much you excise or release? What is the end point?
The end point would be to achieve maximum extension, sir. Basically, so I've described the procedure later on. So should I? So coming to the steps of the procedure, basically the procedure is done in neck extension with the bag under the shoulder. The aim of the procedure would be to attain maximum neck extension with complete release of all the fibrous structures along the line of incision or excision. If necessary, fishtailing on the lateral aspect can also be done to improve the extension. So
what is the lateral extent of your incision?
The lateral extent would be up to where the scar extent is. In this picture, I've demonstrated.
So it can go very well up to the mid-lateral line. So the one side, it is up to here. Okay. So why do you want to do fishtailing in the lateral?
If it's necessary, if the contracture on the lateral aspect is not adequately released with incision and release, only then I would do a fishtailing on the lateral aspect to improve the extension.
So fishtailing will give a zigzag appearance. So your lateral part will not be a straight line. That is why you do a fishtailing.
Yes.
Am I right?
Yes.
Okay.
So following release of the fibrous tissue completely till the underlying supple structure is reached, the scar release should be done. Following which adequate hemostasis should be achieved prior to placement of the split thickness skin graft. Once you're happy with the release and you've achieved the aim of extension,
You check the extension because patient is lying on the table, you release it, or you excise some part of the scar is excised.
Yes.
Then how will you check the extension on the table? So you are doing the surgery.
So the surgery should be done with a bag under the shoulder itself, so that the patient is in extension itself.
So you can remove the head rings.
Okay, sir.
You can check it.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Following adequate release, adequate hemostasis is achieved. Following which split thickness skin grafts of intermediate thickness can be harvested from the thigh. Since the true defect will be much bigger than the apparent defect, she may need 2 to 3 long sheets of split thickness skin grafts.
Okay. Will you do a meshing or not?
Minimal meshing, sir. Minimal meshing so that there's no collection underneath. Other than that, not too much of meshing should not be done in these.
How will you place the graft? You place the graft transversely or vertically?
Transversely, sir. Transversely, horizontally placed grafts is ideal, sir.
Okay.
And
what all things you check? What all angles you check in the end?
So the cervicomental angle is of utmost importance, sir. Basically, to get the depression, aesthetic depression below the mandible. The mandibular margin, if it's adequately clear, that is also important. Yes, and basically prominence of that's it. These.
Okay.
Following placement of the grafts in a horizontal manner, the adequate quilting sutures should be placed, and the graft should be fixed properly. Following which a bolster dressing should be applied for this patient. And post-operatively also, the patient should be kept in neck extension position with the.
Will you put any splint or something like that?
Initially, only a bolster dressing should be kept. Splinting should be done 10 days to 14 days after the procedure. But till then, the patient should maintain neck extension, basically with the bag under the shoulder, even while lying down in the ward.
Okay.
The first dressing change should be done on post-operative day 5 when the bolster is removed. Following which regular dressings can be done. And 10 days later, splinting of the neck in maximum extension with chin support should be given. And it should be carried on for at least a period of 6 months.
So graft contracture is a main problem in all these cases. So how will you follow up?
So basically, after care of the graft, the wound should be kept clean. The graft area should be moisturized regularly, and for long-term treatment, the splint should be continued for a period of 6 months, followed by which night splinting is adequate. Regular physiotherapy should be given to the patient, followed by massage therapy to prevent hypertrophy of the scar, and silicone compression dressing to avoid hypertrophy of the scar. But most important thing would be splintage following the.
What is your other plan?
So my other plan, I was considering a loco-regional flap cover in case there's any structures exposed, if the depth of the scar is too much and it needs flap cover, but flap cover has its own disadvantages and advantages. My first option for a loco-regional flap would be a supraclavicular flap.
Supraclavicular.
Yes.
So for this patient, is it okay? What is the lateralmost extent of supraclavicular flap?
So without delay, it will be the insertion of the deltoid. So you'll get adequate length, but adequate breadth may not be available for this particular patient, since the true defect will be much wider.
For this patient, can you done anything more to getting more width or breadth?
You can delay the flap or expansion.
Yeah, you can. Where will you place the expander? So what shape?
So expander should be in probably in the middle of the flap, so where there'll be the defect will be the most. So shape, oval shaped expander. Not really sure about that. No, oval shaped.
Okay, you need a big expander.
Yes.
So what is the other plan other than supraclavicular flap?
So they've described cervicohumeral flap also as an option, but supraclavicular would be my first option for this patient. Other than that, it would be a free flap. If the donor sites for the locoregional flap cover is not good, then probably free flap cover would be my last option.
What about the trapezius flap? Have you heard of trapezius?
So cervicohumeral flap is
trapezius flap.
No, sir.
Ah, okay. So you did a skin graft.
Yes.
So what are the usual splints available to prevent contractures?
So you can the cheapest and the most easily available way to prepare a splint would be with a POP, sir.
Yes, POP for the patient has to use splint for at least 6 months. So yeah. POP will not. So immediate post-op after the first dressing, she can use.
Followed by that, probably a custom-made static splint would be.
So you can use cervical collar.
Yes.
Hard type or soft type?
Hard type, sir. Hard type.
So, have you heard of Wattusi splint?
So multiple tubings.
Yeah. So you can use, depending on the patient, the tubes can be 5 or 6.
Yes.
So have you seen that?
No, sir. Not seen.
So anything more? So sometimes the patient may have a hypertrophic or keloid tendency. How will you?
Post keloid tendency, post surgically, you can treat with supportive therapies. Either with
Yes.
One thing is intralesional steroids, or with silicone compression and adequate massage therapy, and sometimes even post-surgical radiation therapy is also considered for keloids.
Okay, that's all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Anurag, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Now I think we can start. If there are any questions, I think we can just put the questions to both Anurag sir as well as TC Chandran sir. Let me just check out. Anirudh sir, Dr.
Yeah.
Dipankar Mukherjee sir has just asked a question. What is the difference
Yeah.
between true defect and apparent defect? How to measure those before doing operation during examination?
Yeah. So apparent defect is what you see. For this patient, what is it? True defect is what was originally there. So neck is for bilateral, for hand and all you can compare with the other left or right. For neck, so you have to compare with the other patient with same physique and all. Other bystanders or some other person with the same physique. So you have to measure the distance between. So one is the vertical distance, other is the transverse distance. So vertical distance from the mentum to the sternum. So bony point. Then the lateral point is the mastoid. So you can measure from one mastoid to the. So usually the vertical distance is more involved in this contracture.
Yeah, Shravan, and like sir said, Shravan, you should have probably taken a picture of a similar size physique person, and you should have actually measured, from the distance, which point you're going to take, say from the ear, how many millicentimeters downward. So you mark out all the things in that other. Say, suppose you're taking from another lady, you mark out all the points, then actually check out that complete distance. You take a photo of that, then you would have known correctly what is the distance. I mean, correct in the sense that not 100% accurate, but almost the same thing.
Yeah, assessing this also helps to assess the endpoint in the release. So if you know the true defect, when you release it, you can almost you can measure it, and then you can assess the endpoint of the release.
Yes.
Then another advantage is for planning a flap also. You can have you can plan the flap in proper size.
Yeah. And another thing is, Shravan, almost all these patients would be having some burns of the thighs and other areas where you're going to actually take a graft also. So again, for planning upfront itself, you should know where are the areas you want to paint so that you can get adequate amount of skin graft. Sometimes you might have to take from the abdomen and the other areas. So you have to plan accordingly. So for that, this taking a true defect is absolutely important. Okay.
Yes.
Joseph Carteri has asked another question. Indications for excision and release, sir. I think you have already mentioned it, but if you want to add something, you can add, sir.
Right. So the contracture can be intrinsic or extrinsic. Intrinsic occurs because of the scarring. So all that intrinsic contracture area you have to excite. Other part you can release.
Right. I think it is very obvious what sir has said. We'll go to the next. Joseph, if you have any other one, you can just put it up. Okay. But Chandran sir has actually put, TC Chandran sir has put another question. Do you recommend Ryle's tube feeding in immediate post-operative period?
Usually, from our part, we usually don't put Ryle's tube feeding, but if the burn extends to the chin and the lower lip part, then you know Ryle's tube feeding, because your dressings and tie over will come just close to the lips.
Can I add something?
Yes, sir. Please, sir.
Yeah. Now, why I asked that question is that there are some surgeons who prefer tube feeding because of the fact that they want to avoid the swallowing reflex in the immediate postoperative period so that the graft take is not hampered. So, of course, it is controversial. Some people use it, some people don't. So, I do not know. But I have done both ways with equally good results.
Sir, another question that I had personally is, could you just tell in detail how actually you're going to feed the patients? Because I can actually, practically when we see, in medical colleges and all, we would see that the patient is in full extension. We always make sure that the patient is in extension. And we tell them it will completely come off if you go in for any other this one. But the problem is, you're going to give the patient liquid diet. So when the patient is getting, at least for the first 5 days, we advise them to take liquid diet. So how are you going to give this liquid or soft diet? How are you going to give the patient when the patient is in the lying down position and with the neck extension? Because there's a chance of aspiration there.
So what we do is you can, the patient will be in the ICU cot. You can make it a semi-reclined position, a proper position. You can maintain the extension also simultaneously. Then they can. That is what we are doing.
Yes, sir, and it's, for all these patients, again, dietary component is very important, because most of them would be actually having a lot of compromise in the diet, the protein, hypoproteinemia, etc., because of prolonged what do you call for that burns and recovery period. No, so is there any special dietary recommendation that you would actually suggest for these patients, sir, while the patient is undergoing the treatment for the contracture neck?
Actually, the high protein diet, as you said, you ask them to take a lot of milk, egg, and so actually we have a burn center here. After the establishment that is started 5 years back, now we are getting less and less number of cases after these burns, because the initial burn care itself, they are giving proper care to in the acute burn stage also. They are giving proper care, proper positioning, and early grafting. So before this contracture occurs, so we are getting less and less. Previously, every week we will have 1 or 2 cases. Yes. Now, last year we did only 4 cases. That's only it.
Actually, one way it is very good. It is showing that the awareness and the immediate primary treatment of burns in India is improving drastically, and then the secondary reconstructions that we have to do as plastic surgeons actually coming down. It's a very heartening situation also. At the same time, I think still our postgraduates should know all the treatment modalities when it comes, because all parts of India is not the same.
Yeah.
We'll go to the next question, sir. Please guide on the splints in PBC neck post-operative cases. It's asked by Dr. Rakesh Kumar Sinha.
So here what we do is in the immediate post-op itself, we will give a plaster of Paris splint. Then we will do the graft inspection on the 7th day. So after that we will keep it for 1 more week. After that we are using soft cervical collar. Sometimes that if the patient is usually the educational background is not good, we will use hard cervical collar.
So now you stop using Watusi splints, because we used to use a lot of Watusi splint at Kottayam Medical College, because that is our prime. Yeah, sir, Sangamitra has asked one question. Sir, can you please tell the name of the splint for PBC neck again? I mean, I think sir is just, I mean, this question would have come long time back. This question sir has already answered that. Joseph Carter is again asked, could you explain about mutter flap, sir? Mutter flap, M-U-T-T, mutter flap. I don't know. I don't have any. I don't know about that flap.
Mutter flap, I'm not.
Chandran sir, do you have any response, sir? Chandran sir?
No, I do not know about that.
Okay. Yeah, Joseph, we'll probably check out, and then in case we come out with that, we will probably put it up in the Plastic Quest, the PG group, no? In WhatsApp, we'll put it up in there. Right. Deepakan Mukherjee sir has another question, sir. What is your opinion regarding putting post-op table pop splint after releasing PBC neck with split thickness skin graft? I think POP splint. Yeah, that's it. What is your opinion regarding putting post-op on-table POP splint?
We are putting on-table POP.
Yeah, I think it's an easy way to do. But sometimes now probably many people might actually go in for a more sturdy thing like the fiberglass splints also available. No, maybe something.
Yeah, that is also available. That is
yeah. So according to the thing, so it'll be quite easy and long term you can use. Sir, another question that I wanted to put up, no? So, is there any hard and fast rule by which you go for the timing of the surgery after the burn injury, after the primary burn injury? What is the timing of suppose you're planning to do a split thickness skin graft? So, what would be the timing of your surgery? Would you actually wait for
for PBC neck?
Yeah, yeah.
So actually, we will do at the earliest, because this is the most important thing. So patient may have other contractures. So before this actual real contracture, okay, you can release it earlier. There is no time frame for that. For us, we will do at the earliest.
And what is the absolute necessary for doing a flap reconstruction vis-a-vis a skin graft? Is there some cases where you would prefer to only do a flap reconstruction?
Flap reconstruction is needed in class 3. I think it is young patient with class 3 contracture, very tight contracture, young patient. So in that case, so we did one case, we used an expander. The supraclavicular flap, the expander is of the shape of a kidney-shaped expander. It is available, got from Hyderabad. So we expanded it, and then so that is having a good result, because the patient should undergo multiple stages. Then expander, nowadays we will go from the insurance, government insurance itself. So more than that, less than 18 years, there is a separate insurance scheme for the children. So the money is not a problem. So in class 3 cases only. Otherwise, usually we don't, because all flaps will be little bit bulkier. You need some amount of thinning later on, shaping and all.
Yeah. In a few cases, we have actually done occipital artery perforator flap, because based on the occipital artery, we used to take a large flap from the posterior, from the back. We include the circumflex scapular vessels in that, and then we swing the whole flap to the anterior neck, and then you do the anastomosis with the facial or one of the neck vessels and the rest one, so that you get a whole complete resurfacing of the anterior neck. Now the question is whether you want to actually base it on the cervical, or I mean, if you're going to do, when you're going to connect it, you might as well connect the artery also. Then it becomes a very robust flap. So that is one thing.
So many flaps have described. Also, that is the vertical trapezius flap.
Correct.
So that is, so many flaps have described.
Sir, what about the use of Integra nowadays? Because Integra.
Nowadays. You're right. The role of Integra has really increased, especially in the early phase. So suppose if it is deep partial thickness burns or a full thickness burns, so you can give an early cover.
Shravan, can you just tell how Integra? You have any clue of how Integra?
So Integra is basically where to a certain extent, when there's exposure of tendon or bone, it forms like a structural base for the split thickness skin graft. It gives stability to the split thickness skin graft. So it's basically kept for 3 weeks prior to grafting, and after 3 weeks, split thickness skin graft can be put over the Integra itself.
Normally, come on, Sean. Tell me, Sean.
Certain small exposed areas of tendon, and to some extent, small exposed bone areas can also be covered with Integra, but to a very small extent.
Cost is the main factor.
Shravan, normally the Integra comes actually in 2 layers. It has got a matrix layer, and it has got a silicone cover on top of it. Usually nowadays the silicone comes with multiple perforations in that, and always, especially in the neck and all, if it is possible, what you do is you keep your Integra just like you keep a full thickness graft, and once that is kept, and then you actually fix it to the skin edges, you put a vac on top of it. The idea of putting a VAC is actually it will increase the chance that of the integra take, of the vascularization of the integra. The thing is that you remove that VAC at around 10th day, and then you reapply the VAC again. Okay, and the 20th day, that is around 3 weeks, then you actually remove it. By then, once you remove the silicone sheet, you will be able to see that very good vascularity is there. It will be pink in color. It will not be a red kind of a thing, but it will be pink in color, and then you can actually put in the this one graft on top of that. So now the graft has got a base, and the quality of the graft is much better than what you put directly on the thing. But all other things you might have to actually continue. You will have to actually use the splints and all. And that is that. Another question I just wanted to ask Shravan. Shravan, see, now you are actually told that you have actually exercised this particular neck defect, and you have got you are trying to reconstruct the cervicomental angle also, and you said you will actually put in the grafts as transverse things. You will never be able to get a full thing. You will have to keep 2 sheets of grafts. So how will you actually plan it?
Horizontally placed.
Yeah, and where would the joint line be?
So preferably the area of the anatomical creases.
You should try to aim for that to come into the cervicomental area. The idea is that when you do that, when you fix it, you have to do do thyroid dressings. No? So what happens is that you leave long on both the sides, and in the center portion, wherever you're taking fixation, you leave both the threads very long. So one thread can be actually fixed to the top, one thread can be fixed to the bottom, like that. So it has to come correctly on the cervicomental angle. So that is again something that is actually practically very simple and very useful to actually. No matter flap, please comment. Oh, again, Rakesh Kumar Sinha has asked a question. So please comment on the tumescence.
We usually use the usual, that is 500 ml saline, 30 ml lignocaine, then 1 ampule of adrenaline. That is what we are using here.
We just regular tumescence we use, but we got to actually make sure that there is no post-op. I mean, there is no actually bleeding after that. No?
Yeah.
That is yeah. And next is I think more or less all the questions for the post-punch contractors done.